are basically three outlines that he can do. He can either go back to combat operations, engage in a diplomatic negotiated settlement, or he can just pretend that he won and then walk away. Those are all three legitimate possibilities and that he may choose. And we're going to take a look at each one of those in order today. And we have back with us today for the first time in a little bit of time, Patrick Henningsen, who's a journalist and geopolitical analyst and the founder of news analyst website 21stcenturywire.com and host of the Sunday Wire Show. Patrick, as always, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be with you, Danny. Thanks.
Listen, glad to have you here today. I want to look at actually the whole Truth Social that he posted there, because I think it's important to put, this is at 1 a.m, by the way, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner. So apparently he still doesn't get much sleep. But he said Iran really wants to make a deal, and it will be a good one for the USA and for those that are with us. But don't the Democrats and the seemingly unpatriotic Republicans understand that it is much tougher for me to properly do my job and negotiate when political hacks keep negatively chirping at levels never seen before? Apparently, he hasn't seen many levels of chirping. I've seen a bunch of that over the years, over and over again. And I should move faster or slower or go to war or not go to war or whatever. Just sit back and relax, and it'll all work out in the end. Everything will be great. It always does, says he. But look, Patrick, I mean, let's just look at a couple of recent pieces here. This is from May 24th, where Trump says, nothing was said about him, but Trump says an agreement with Iran has been largely negotiated and the Strait of Hormuz will soon be open. And then we had last Friday, he's going to have the national security folks meet in the Situation Room, and he's going to make a final determination. And now here it is Monday morning. No final determination is made. Is it unpatriotic to chirp about that kind of stuff?
We just don't appreciate the work that he's doing to keep us safe, to protect our freedoms here in America. I mean, I can totally appreciate the president's frustration there. Any of us who are criticizing this president, surely we're all guilty of treason, Danny. So I mean, that's kind of where the president is at. In my estimation, based on what I have seen and based on what I have read, based on the conversations I've had with people in Iran and who are knowledgeable of this situation, Iran has no interest in making a deal with the United States in so much as this, quote, deal that Trump is talking about, or Trump's idea of a deal. It's a non-starter. It's been a non-starter for quite a long time. And it's just, he's falling back on the same kind of lines. And this is a repeat of the Russia negotiations pantomime, where he'll say periodically, look, they really want to make a deal. The Russians really want to make a deal. They really want to do. I want to make a deal as well. And we're very close, very close. It's the same script. He's not talking directly to the Iranians. The United States is, let me repeat, the United States is not talking to the Iranians. They're sending messages through intermediaries like Pakistan. And they probably, I mean, I don't know what you think, Daniel, about the reports earlier that Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former Iranian president, that he was somehow being lined up as a successor for regime change. That's the sort of crazy idea that was probably fed into the president's head for months, that we think we're talking to somebody and we think Ahmadinejad's our guy. He's going to be, we can deal with him. He said, all this was fantasy. It was who knows how and where that sort of emanated from. Could very well have been static and noise coming from Israeli sources, or through the Witkoff-Kushner network or something like that. But I really don't see or hear anything from this president that's even remotely approaching any kind of realistic agreement or arrangement with the Iranians. They're absolutely in the driving seat. They have laid down their terms, what they want. And unfortunately, a lot of what Iran is requiring is not doable by the United States.
And I'm sorry, before we get it, because I'm going to get into all those details in just a second, but on this topic you just mentioned about this Ahmadinejad deal that was flying around and all these claims, et cetera, there was a maybe categorically similar thing that was flying all over the social media over the weekend that the current president, Pezeshkian, had resigned under protest, that he was angry that the IRGC was taken over and he had resigned, even though the Iranian press kept coming out over and over and saying there's no truth to that. He himself came out in a public forum on Sunday, I think it was, and said, listen, I'm not going to do anything. In fact, I'll be a martyr before I'll be walking away from this. And yet it was everywhere. I lost count of the number of otherwise big social media outlets that said, no, it's been confirmed. He did. He walked away. He's all this stuff. And yet here he is still this morning. What do you make of that?
Look, you drill down to that story, and it's anonymous sources told Iran International, which is not a real media outlet. Iran International is an Israeli-controlled disinformation propaganda outlet that was used to be run out of North America. Now it's, I believe they have offices in London. So this is just an Israeli propaganda clearinghouse. Axios, Jerusalem Post, they ran with this as well. It doesn't make any sense. And this idea that he's somehow arguing about IRGC influence, listen, the IRGC are in complete control of Iran because they're in a state of war. The IRGC has a mandate in Iran to protect the country. And that's just the way it is. And that's not going to change until they sign some peace treaty. And we all know that there's going to be no peace treaty or any real binding treaty signed with the United States anytime soon. Not under this administration, not in the next year or two. So this fake talking point about IRGC influence, this is a public relations gambit that was coming out of Washington or Israel or something to try to create, I don't know, an impression that there's confusion and chaos on the Iranian side. That's the only thing I can kind of guess.
I mean, what? Because I was thinking, and I was told, by the way, by a former U.S. ambassador that this was definitely an intentional misinformation campaign. He said by the Israelis. So whoever did it doesn't really matter. It was a misinformation campaign, and the Iranian side has said so from the beginning. But what would be the perceived benefit of that? Because a similar theme is constantly especially in the Fox News, Newsmax, in several other outlets that we don't even know who is in charge in Iran. We don't know who we're dealing with. Maybe it's this guy, maybe it's that guy, whatever. That plays well here. But what does that have any impact at all? And maybe it does. I'm just asking you because you have connections there. What impact, if any, does that have on the Iranian side that would help our side in any way?
I can't see it. I can't see it. I don't, if you even have a sort of even novice understanding of how the Iranian chain of command works, you'll know that the president doesn't have any direct authority over military affairs or even these negotiations. That all lies very, very firmly with the supreme leader, the council of experts, and the IRGC. And the president is there in a kind of domestic role, symbolic political role, but with all the things that we're concerned with here internationally, if the president has to be on board actually with all of that, and they're in a state of war. Iran is in a state of war, so everything they do is as if they are officially at war. And I don't think people understand, or at least the U.S. Audience who doesn't get that. They're going to misread all of these sort of fake reports that are being pushed out. I can't understand why they're doing it other than to, as a sort of advanced move in order to support some new talking point that's coming up, or maybe a military strike, a potential regime change, decapitation strike, maybe.
I suppose it's possible that that the intended target is not the Iranian public, not to undermine confidence in their leadership, but maybe in the American public in particular, in the Western media, to say, hey, listen, these guys, and I've heard this a couple of times here in just the last 1 week, where still people are saying, you know what, these guys are as weak as they've ever been. They don't even know who's in charge. All we got to do is push it a little bit harder. What do you think of that?
Yeah, you're probably closer to the truth there, because that follows on the kind of path that Trump was building in terms of a narrative that they don't really have a leadership. They're totally in disarray. The supreme leader's hiding in a cavern somewhere in Iran and hasn't showed his face to the public. all of these things. And you have to remember, the U.S. is still hanging their hat on this idea that the quote regime slaughtered 40,000 or 30,000 or 50,000 or whatever of its own people, and that they're not really legitimate, and they're ruling like a dictatorial autocracy with an iron fist, killing their own people willy-nilly. That's still part of Trump's kind of narrative. So that sort of plays into that. It's not really a stable country. Their political economy is fraying at the seams, and all of these things. When in fact, quite the opposite is true. They have a tremendous amount of leverage over the United States. And not just the Strait of Hormuz, they've got leverage regionally, they've got leverage geopolitically. Their ties with China and Russia have strengthened. As well, other countries are now talking to Iran on a much different level than they were before the war. And Iran's clearly elevated itself regionally and globally as a sort of state actor, geopolitical force. But I also wonder, Danny, does Iran have other leverage over the United States? I mean, I'm always wondering if there's something else, something that there might be an implicit agreement not to talk about that's trying to be resolved behind the scenes. It could have to do with perhaps the enrichment of uranium, but I would not rule out the possibility. I know this might sound like a long shot, but the failed raid at Isfahan, that could have very well resulted in fatalities or even soldiers being captured. This has happened in history, and quietly those negotiations go on behind the scenes because the United States hasn't made any really big attacks since then. So I'm always just searching for something, because just this whole charade right now of negotiations is very strange. Because I mean, the U.S. have had heavy assets and naval assets. They put carrier groups in position. They've removed carrier groups, but they haven't struck the Iranians. And I just wonder why there's this hesitation on Trump's part, why he's committing and then pulling back, and so there might be a few potential factors in there, or they might be very well trying to do some kind of engineer some kind of a deal, a triangular deal with another country, maybe Russia, or with Rotasem or somebody handling the enriched uranium, and they just don't want to publicize it. But if they do, then it'll wreck those arrangements that are currently they're trying to negotiate. Who knows? I'm not sure.
Let's take a look at that, because that's as I see it, there are three general courses of action President Trump has to choose from. None of them are good, but there are three as I see them. First of all is just listen to all of the noise and return to combat operations and try and do what you didn't do in the first 40 days. The second one is trying to have a negotiated settlement, which would have to be done. And you're talking about some of this here. There would have to be an agreement that both sides can live with, which is a really high bar to cross for the Trump side. Or the third one is to just pretend like I won and then just walk away. And I want to look at all this, because the last one sounds like a throwaway, but it's actually a legitimate possibility that I know is being considered inside the White House. Let's take a look at these in order here. There is still a significant coterie of people that are saying, hey, you know what? Let's go back and finish the job. You've got a lot of individuals. You see a few of them here on the screen. Jack Keane, of course, and Lindsey Graham are two other big ones on that one. You've got organizations like AEI, Foundation for Defensive Democracies. Yoav Gallant from Israel loves to finish the job. You see that common theme here, all these. And then there's major publications, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. Yeah, man, let's go and finish the job, etc. But as you said, President Trump really hasn't done that so far, but these people keep pushing that direction. But there are two big headwinds. There are actually three headwinds against that. And I'd like you to talk about each of these in order. Number one is that we use so much ammunition in the first, and I'm talking about the key weapon systems of the JASSMs, long-range cruise missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, THAAD interceptors, and PAC-3 interceptors. So 2 offensive, 2 defensive. Took years or it's going to already take years to go through from what we've already done here. And then the other half of that equation is that Iran has regained access to most of its missile and underground sites. No matter what we did with using that much ammunition, it did not take them out, and they have already recovered. So that would seem to be pushing really hard against, we should go back and do it again, because we don't have as much ammunition. It didn't work the first time, but that seems to still be on the table. Why are people, so many people, organizations, media, pushing so hard for something that self-evidently won't work?
Well, on the first option, to finish the job, the U.S. has made sort of intermediary moves even in the last couple of days. This appeared to have destroyed a Iranian radar facility on Surik Island, and those strikes against the islands in the Strait, the small islands, they seem to be a prelude to a potential military attack, or maybe an occupation of one of these islands, or strategic pieces of land within the strait. Who knows? But that does kind of make sense in that direction, although I just find it improbable that the U.S. would be able to do like a landing and hold territory. But still, maybe they're just jousting on that right now. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think on the arms depletion, that's of course a very real situation, and the U.S. would need to buy time. So maybe the diplomatic shuffling back and forth and the head fakes and everything is just part of buying time. Then, if they believe, if Trump or Hegseth are hedging, believe they have enough in stock, if they can pull them from other locations and get them into position, that might take weeks or more, but that they would have enough for some kind of a grand fireworks show that might last a week or two, whereby they would call it mission accomplished, but it would be peace without peace. In other words, it would be like a standing order for a future conflict, whereby the United States could just prick Iran periodically and continue some of these games in the absence of a full-blown military attack again on Iran, not for a while, until they're able to execute some kind of a decisive blow against Iran. So we're caught in this kind of middle phase, and it could just be because I cannot see a negotiated settlement that's going to be binding. So we're kind of, the U.S. is really stuck. They have to keep
but
things
aren't we
going.
also stuck from the fact? I mean, even if they are trying to, let's bide our time. I mean, you saw that thing; it could take years to get even the replacement. But then there's the issue of, okay, so you replace it all. Is a JASSM or a Tomahawk going to penetrate a mountain that it didn't penetrate the last time? I mean, what's the end state here? What's the objective?
Well, the objective is Karl Rove, history's actors. I mean, they could just destroy Iranian infrastructure, electrical grid, go back and redestroy South Park gas field and their petrochemical industrial complex, and say that, oh, that's put them back another 5 years, and then just wait a year and then maybe do something again after a year. Who knows? But we all know that Iran's going to retaliate. So that's not really going to work either. So I honestly, the longer Trump waits to respond militarily after all of these threats, then the political price just raises higher and higher at home, domestically, for the United States, and also internationally. The reputation suffers incrementally the longer he waits. So either, I don't want to use a derogatory term, but you either sort of do something, or get off of the pot, as it were. So, and he's caught in the middle. So, and Israel needs to buy time as well, because their defenses are clearly depleted. So this serves them. You notice the other thing is Israel's continuing to make incursions into Lebanon, and they're escalating now. And that's also part of any grand bargain, is what's happening in Lebanon. The U.S. and Israel want to separate that, but from the Iranian point of view, that's all part of the negotiations, or at least more broadly, that's part of the geopolitics.
Sorry about that. On the screen there. Let's look through. So bottom line is, there's not a viable alternative to go back. If you go back, because you didn't even talk about the fact that Iran, if we did any version of that, go back to fighting, that they're going to crush the whole energy infrastructure, or possibly desalinization plants, et cetera, in the Middle East, and just wreck the whole place, which would almost certainly send us into a global depression. So that also is a kind of a big headwind.